Deputy Kathleen Funchion.
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to speak to probably 3 of the recommendations mainly, but just to say, I suppose, in advance of that, I thought it was apt that the 2 of the topical issues that were up today, one was in relation to speech and language delays for children, and one was in relation to the special school. Deputy Ryan just brought that issue up. I think in general, when we're talking about special education or we talk about children with an additional need, we constantly seem to be they seem to be viewed or treated, as second-class citizens. And as much as some people might disagree with that analysis, it's the case because they have to battle for absolutely everything, whether it's speech and language, whether it's occupational therapy, whether it's a place in a preschool, a place on a bus, a place in a school. And we seem to accept standards for children with additional needs that we wouldn't accept for other children, like long delays, long travel distances in the morning, travelling to and from school, and then we're supposed to tell parents and children they should be grateful for these. They should be grateful that they finally got a school place after battling and being stressed for the previous 2 years in a lot of cases. And it's just really not good enough, and I kind of feel like we talk about it an awful lot in this chamber, and I nearly want to apologise to anyone that's heard me speak on this topic before, because I'm pretty much going to be saying the same thing that I always say, but hopefully at some point it will be taken on board and it will be listened to, because it's an area that I do have a very strong interest in, and I just really feel strongly that it's completely unacceptable that we do treat children with additional needs in this way. The main areas I want to focus on are recommendation 4, 5 and 8. So recommendation 4 is in relation to the shortage of specialised school places for post-primary children with autism and other special educational needs. And the committee is asking that that be addressed as a matter of urgency. Coincidentally, last week our office got a call from a lady in our constituency who was highlighting this very matter. There is 2 ASD classes available at post-primary level. One is in Kilkenny City and one is in rural Kenny. Actually, Minister, I think it's at the school that you were visiting yesterday in Ballyhale. That's it for any child that has maybe come on really well through an ASD class, through a special class, and then when it comes to secondary school, they are extremely limited. There's really only those 2 schools. You have the whole issue of geography and where you're living, and it's just, again, completely unacceptable. And I think it is a very serious matter. It's very live in my constituency, but I'm sure it's the same for a lot of TDs. In relation to recommendation 5 about the training for staff, from teachers to bus escorts, to be made compulsory, and that consideration be given to the provision of a separate fund for this training to be made available by the Department of Education, so as not to impact further on the funding of schools. I fully support that recommendation, and it's similar enough to an oral question that I raised with you earlier in the week in relation to having a specific training course for teachers to teach in either special education schools or in an ASD class or a special class. And I know you'll always be met with inclusiveness, and everybody wants inclusiveness, but I also think that in some situations this could be very good, because not only are you given obviously the very much needed and required training, but you're giving people an opportunity that have a specific interest in this area as well, and a very specific interest in working with children with an additional need. And I think we should really look at that, and I think it would be I know you did say you would you didn't mind, I think were your words, earlier in the week, to look at the area, but I do hope, given this recommendation in the report as well, that you will look at that, because we do see a huge increase in ASD classes, and I think we have to, also meet that with the required training and the training that's needed, and to give teachers the opportunity, and also special needs assistants. A lot of them who've worked in that field for years would love to progress on and teach in a special education school or class, and unfortunately at the moment they're met with an awful lot of barriers. And I think that that's something, we need to look at some of these practical things. I don't like to come in and be negative and criticise without saying what are some of the things that we should do, and I think that that is one area that we can look at, because there is a high amount of special needs assistants that would like to progress on further, and people in general that would have a specific interest in special education. I think this funding, this training should be made available. Recommendation 6, which I know I didn't reference earlier, but I just wanted to make the point, because a witness that was at one of the hearings made the point that she was initially employed as a nurse for 26.5 hours for 3 children, and then this got reduced to 24 hours, despite the fact that she now cared for 24 children. So it went from 3 children to 24 children, and the hours were reduced. She was unable to take a lunch break and was working a further 9 hours that she wasn't paid for. So, I mean, this is unacceptable completely, and we can't have these situations. That's not going to be sustainable either. There's no way anybody can, with all the best will in the world, can stay in a job working under those types of terms and conditions. And again, it's just, we wouldn't accept it in other sectors. So we shouldn't accept it when it comes to special education and children with additional needs. I also wanted to make the point 8 is in relation to DEIS. And I'd agree with Deputy O'Loughlin. I mean, DEIS can be a great system in schools, particularly in recent years where we've seen, a high impact of cuts and a lot of children going to school hungry, not being able to afford a lunch, and the impact of poverty on children. But we need to figure out a way of the resources following the child, because there is a lot of children that are not in DEIS schools that are really struggling and are really impacted. And in some of the schools, in a very small few schools, they may have access to the school completion programme. That is primarily in DEIS schools, but it is in a few other schools as well. But for the vast majority of children, they don't have access to these services. And, they're not going to need the services of TUSLA or something like that. But, if we could figure out a way of the resources following the child for those children, or expanding the DEIS school to include some of these schools, I think it would be extremely valuable. I think that those are the main points that I just want to make on it. But I suppose I just hope that we do look at these recommendations. And I do have to say, Minister, I think you have a genuine interest in this area, and I think you do want to see progress in this area. And you also come from a rural constituency, so you know what it's like for children like that are faced with long journeys and long waiting lists. So hopefully, we will see action on some of these things, because we can't continually just keep talking about it and saying how bad it is. And we do point out progress, small bits of progress here and there, but it's not enough. It's not meeting the demands. It's not acceptable, for example, in Kilkenny, that there's only 2 ASD classes at post-primary level. That's just completely unfair. We're completely disadvantaging children with an additional need. So I just hope that these recommendations are taken on board, and that we do see action in the near future, and not 5 or 10 years down the road when we've discovered a whole new set of problems. Chair.
Thank you, Deputy.